Perfect. Perfect.
All right, everybody, what's going on? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of SWAC Talk. This is the show we cover the SWAC inside and out. I'm your tour guide around the SWAC. See what else coming at you. And I decided that, with football being just about over, we got the Celebration Bowl coming on Saturday. We're gonna preview that game on Wednesday. With football coming to a close, and it'll be a while before basketball kind of get into full swing. Yes, we have recruiting signing day coming up, and we have the coaching searches and all that stuff coming up. So it's going to be football a lot for the next few months. But with that being what it is, I figured we can kind of recap everybody's season, team by team, um, till we get to full swing in basketball. So we're gonna start this recap session off with Alabama A&M. We're gonna look at how the Bulldogs season went, and just kind of talk about, whether they exceeded expectations or they didn't. We'll just kind of go through everything. We'll do this team by team until we get done. So, with that being said, man, y'all hit those socials. I'm gonna, I don't really have a set schedule for how these are gonna drop, so just kind of keep it locked on my socials, because I'll put it up. I'll like put up when it's coming the day before it's coming. So just kind of keep it locked there. Check out this Facebook is Swag Talk, Instagram Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Like the video, share it, comment, and feel free to hit that join button to become a member, or you can hit the super thanks. When you do a comment, you get the super thanks, or you can hit the Cash App $ Swag Talk. Anything would be appreciated. Like I said, Wednesday we'll have our recap. Our preview of the SWAC championship game, and I'll probably drop my HBCU top 10 for the post championship game week on that same show. So keep it locked on that. Thursday is SWAC Smoke. Plus, we also have a special guest coming on SWAC Smoke, so stay tuned for that. That's Thursday, live 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. Go try to work a couple extra guests in there, so we'll just have a little fun there. And Sunday we're gonna recap the Celebration Bowl. So y'all just keep rocking with us, and we're gonna have it up and running. So let's go ahead and talk Alabama A&M, man. The Bulldogs, they finished 5-6 this season, 3-5 in conference. I predicted them during my season preview, which I'll post the link in the description if you want to go back and watch that. In my season preview, I had the Bulldogs finishing at 6-5 and 4-4 in conference. So I was one game off. One game, I had one win too many on both aspects for the Bulldogs. So they kind of finished under what I expected, but had an interesting season, kind of a season of ups and downs. They opened up the season losing to Vanderbilt 47-13. They would beat Lane the next week 51-13. The following week they would lose to Southern 20-10. Then on a Thursday night they would beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 31-24 at home. They would beat Tuskegee on their homecoming 58-3. They would lose to Jackson State 45-30 in Mobile in the Gulf Coast Challenge. They would go to Grambling and beat Grambling 45-24 the following week. Then after a week off in the Magic City Classic, they would lose to Bama State 31-16. And again, they had pretty good control over early. Late score for Bama State gave them control, and the Hornets pulled out the W there. November 4th, they would lose to FAMU 42-28 in a game that they led early, but just couldn't keep it going. And then they would lose to Bethune-Cookman 31-14 and close out their season with a victory over Valley 30-21. So they never really put together any winning streaks of any long record. The longest win streak on the season was 2 games. That was beating Pine Bluff and Tuskegee, and then they would close. They would have a 3-game losing streak toward the end of the season before they finished up with a win. The Bulldogs would finish 4-1 at home, 1-3 on the road, and 0-2 on neutral sites. Um, Looking at this team statistically, kind of looking at them overall. Last season, they were kind of a not great team. Just looking back at last season, they were 10th in the league in scoring offense at 20.5 points per game. They were also 10th in scoring defense, allowing 32.1 points per game. They were third in total offense at 379 yards per game. They were seventh in total defense at 382 per game. Rushing offense, they were sixth at 159 yards per game. Rushing defense, they were eighth, 157 yards per game. Passing offense, they were fourth at 220 yards per game. The pass defense was 11th at 225 per game. They were fifth in sacks against, allowing 24. They were eighth in sacks by their defense at 23. They were eighth in interceptions at 9. And they were 12th in third down conversion at 29%. Third down defense, they were 10th at 42%. Fourth down offense, they were third at 50%. And fourth down defense, they were 12th at 55%. So comparing those numbers from 2022 to the 2023 season to see how much they improved or didn't improve, um, they were second in the league in scoring offense at 29 points per game. So their offense actually improved their point total by 9 full points. So they were definitely a better scoring offense this season. Their scoring defense was 27.4 points per game, which was eighth in the league. So they decreased their opponent's scoring by about 4 points per game. So the defense got a little bit better there. The total offense was 374 yards per game. The number was down by a yard or two, and they finished fourth place this season. Their total defense was up from seventh place to sixth place this year at 348 yards per game. So they had a nice little improvement by the defense. Their rushing offense was 153 yards per game. They improved to fifth, although last season they were sixth at 159 yards per game. So that shows you how the numbers for offenses kind of dropped across the league. They ran for 6 fewer yards than they did last year, but they finished one place higher in the conference. So that was kind of an indictment of the offenses. And I have a video to talk about SWAC offenses, so you can check that out as well. Link will be in the description. Total rushing defense, they were sixth at 142 yards per game. That was an improvement of about 15 yards per game, so they definitely got better there. Passing offense, they were third at 221 yards per game, just a slight decrease. Well, actually, it was an increase of about a yard. So pass defense, they went from 11th to 8th, got better there, 204 yards per game. Sacks against the offensive line allowed 21 sacks this season, which was fifth as well as last season, but they allowed 3 fewer sacks. Defensively, they had 21 sacks, which is ninth in the league. They dropped 2 sacks lower than last season. They were nine. They had 9 interceptions last season, 11 this year. They jumped up to 5th in interceptions. This is where their team improved the most, even though their record wasn't great. They led the league in third down conversions as an offense at 40%. So they went from last to first. That's a great improvement for anybody's offense. You would like to see that translate into more wins, but it obviously didn't. Third down defense, they were sixth at 35%. They improved from allowing 42%, so they went from 10th to 6th. Fourth down offense, they were ninth. They dropped from third to ninth from last season to this season, 40% down from 50%. And 23% third down defense, which was fourth down defense, which was second in the league. They went from 12th, allowing 55% to 23%. So they definitely got better on defense. This team actually improved in a lot of ways on both sides of the ball. It just didn't translate into wins. And if you want to look at the one thing that can make or break a team is can you win these games? They found themselves in some positions where they couldn't really make it happen enough to get victories, and some of that was injury. They played 2 quarterbacks basically like last season, but The running game was slightly worse this season than last season, and a lot of that was due to injury, and that hurt them a bit. They averaged 52 yards per game on penalties. The opponents averaged 61 yards per game. They had 74 penalties for 572 yards. Opponents 80 penalties for 681 yards on the season, and they averaged 40 yards per punt, and the opponents averaged 38 yards per punt. Looking at some of the individual guys to lead the team, Donovan Eaglin finished the season with 765 yards on 142 carries, averaged 5.4 yards per carry and 7 touchdowns. Didn't really have that breakout season that a lot of people expected. He battled injury for large portions of the season. Was held out of a game. Just kind of didn't really have the numbers per se that he had last season. Now that's not to say that he wasn't a good back or anything like that. It just was, he was just one of those guys that just did not break out like he did the previous season. Um, Quincy Casey would lead the team in passing, going 115 of 195 with 11 touchdowns and 6 interceptions with 1,490 yards. Xavier Langford, 81 of 144 for 904 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Receiving, Jacoby Hewitt led the team with 32 catches for 516 yards and 4 touchdowns. Cameron Young, 53 catches to lead the team, 511 yards, 9 yards per catch, 5 touchdowns. Keenan Hambrick, 24 catches, 377 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Terrell Gardner, 30 catches, 376 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And LeVar Gums, 16 catches, 155 yards, and 1 touchdown. So they had 4 guys with over 20 catches on the season. They also had 4 guys with over 300 yards on the season, and those same 4 guys each had more than 1 touchdown on the season. So they had a guy in Young who was their go-to guy in terms of targets. Hewitt was their big play guy. He averaged 16 yards per catch, and they had a nice little passing game that kind of really flourished, especially when Quincy Casey was out there. They were more of a passing team when Casey was out there. When Langford was out there, they ran a little bit better, but the offense, wasn't as bad as they were in the previous season. Turnovers were still an issue. They had 13 interceptions on the season and 11 fumbles, so they turned the ball over 22 times on the season. Defensively, they forced 15 fumbles and they had 11 interceptions. So they finished positive +3 in the turnover margin, but they still turned the ball over a good bit from last season to this season. Jordan Mitchell led the team with 73 tackles. Marvin Smith with 62. Xavier Billingsley had 57. Caleb Dawson with 50. Imari Pate had 49. Tackles for loss, Zarion Hayes had 10.5 to lead the defense. He also was an all-SWAC guy. Jordan Mitchell, 8.5 tackles for loss. Xavier Billingsley, 8. Caleb Dawson had 6. Jamarion Ellis had 6 as well. Sacks, Mitchell led the defense with 5. Hayes, 3.5. Ellis, 2.5. Colson had 2. Pate led the defense with 4 interceptions. He also was an all-SWAC guy. Had a really, really great season in the defensive backfield. Ezio Mune had 9 pass breakups. Hayes led the team with 6 quarterback hurries. Ellis had 3 fumble recoveries, and Billingsley and Petway each had 2 fumbles. And this team blocked 3 kicks. Billingsley, Hayes, and Izumune. I know I'm killing that name. Y'all, please forgive me. Ezio Mumi. I'm murdering that name. I'm gonna leave it there. They each had 3 blocked kicks. The defense had no safeties on special teams. Austin McCready averaged 43 yards per punt with a long of 65. He finished the season with 12 punts inside the 20 and 13 50-plus yard punts. Victor Barbosa finished the season 6 of 9 on field goals. He was 1 for 1 inside 20 yards. He was 4 of 5 from 20 to 29 yards. He was 1 for 1 from 30 to 39 yards and 0 for 2 from 40 plus. Long on the season with 37. Didn't like I said, this team didn't really kick a lot of long field goals. If they were outside of 40 yards, they went for it more often because they only kicked 2 field goals from 40 plus and they missed them both. They did have 1 kick blocked on the season. Kickoffs, McCready had a 57-yard average on 2 kicks. Luke Moffitt had a 54.5-yard average per kick on kickoffs with 17 touchbacks. He had 59 kicks for 3,218 yards. Had 17 touchbacks, as I said, and 1 kick out of bounds. Return game, they were very, very good. Terrell Gardner was a very, very solid weapon for them in the return game. He averaged 13.7 yards per punt return with 1 touchdown, a 69 yarder. He had 13 returns for 179 yards. He also led the team in kickoff returns with 15 returns for 342 yards, averaged 22.6 yards per return, had a long of 57, which was also the longest on the team. Kind of looking at some of their leading scorer on the team was Barbosa. He finished the season with 57 points. Like I said, he had 6 field goals, and he was 39 of 40 on extra points. Eaglin had 42 points on the season. He finished the season with 7 touchdowns. Langford had 6 touchdowns rushing to finish with 38 points because he also had a 2-point conversion to give him 38 points. Ryan Morrow has 6 touchdowns on the season to finish with 36 points. Cameron Young had 5 touchdowns to finish with 34 points. Looking at some of their individual highs on the season, Donovan Eaglin finished with a season high of 27 carries against Valley. He also had 207 yards in that game. Ryan Morrow had 3 touchdowns on the ground against Lane. Eaglin had a 67-yarder against Valley. That was the longest run of the season for the team. Langford attempted 40 passes against Bama State. Casey had 27 completions against Pine Bluff. 328 yards also in that game against Pine Bluff by Quincy Casey. Casey had 4 touchdown passes against Tuskegee. He had a 76-yarder against Tuskegee, which was the longest of the season. Cameron Young had 8 catches in 2 games, 1 against Lane and 1 against Jackson State. Hambrick had the season high in yards, 147 against Tuskegee. TDs, they had 4 guys with 2 touchdowns in a game. Cameron Young against Lane, Barry White against Pine Bluff, Jacoby Hewitt against Tuskegee, and Keenan Hambrick against Tuskegee. And Hambrick had that 76-yard catch from Casey. Barbosa kicked 2 field goals against Vandy. His long on the season was 37 against Valley. McCready had 6 punts against Vandy. His average 53.3 was a season high against FAMU, and his longest punt was 65 against Tuskegee. Gardner had that 69-yard punt return for a touchdown against Lane. He also had a 57-yard kickoff return against Lane. Jordan Mitchell led the defense with 14 tackles. That was a season high against Bethune-Cookman. Zarion Hayes had 2.5 sacks against Bethune-Cookman. Against Pine Bluff. And Amari Pate had 2 interceptions against Lane. So that Lane game was one of their season highs. And just looking at some so those are some of the numbers that were highs against opponents. They ran the ball 52 times against Valley, 336 yards on the ground against Groundling was a season high. They had 5 rushing touchdowns in that game. They threw the ball 43 times against Jackson State. They completed 27 against Pine Bluff. They threw for 338 against Tuskegee, and they had 5 TD passes against Tuskegee. So just kind of wanted to give you an idea what some of their game highs were, and just kind of make some things, look at how this team did on the season. One final number I did want to throw out is their red zone numbers. They were 35 or 45 in the red zone. They had 29 touchdowns on the season. The opponents were 32 or 43 in the red zone with 22 touchdowns. So, like I said, when this is a team kind of when you look at the numbers, numbers don't tell a whole lot because this team was not really bad in anything statistically. Their lowest ranking on the season was ninth place, and that was sacks by the defense and fourth down defense. Other than that, they were in middle of the pack or even top part of the league in a lot of stats. They just were kind of snake bit a little bit. They fell behind big to Jackson State, had to try to make a furious comeback, came up 15 points short. Um, they had the game in control against Bama State, gave up a big second half. They were in the game against FAMU, gave up a lot of points after halftime. They allowed Bethune-Cookman to go crazy on the ground against them. Um, and so they just really were snake bit. They had a game against Southern where they finished with negative yards rushing. Those two D2 games do buoy their overall numbers a lot. But this was not a bad team. I think they just had a rough stretch in the middle of the season that kind of wore them down, because when you look at where they were going into that FAMU game, even off of a loss to Bama State the week before, they still had a outside chance to get to the SWAC championship game. Now they would have had to beat FAMU and need FAMU to lose another game, but they still had a mathematical chance. And that's on November 4th. And they would lose that game, and then the following game, and that would just knock them out completely. So they had their opportunities, but this team just was up and down, and they just never really were able to get anything going consistently. And it shows in their record. It's like the saying goes, "You are what your record is," and their record is, below average. So they were a below average team, although they were a dangerous team, as they showed, being able to score points in some games. So that's gonna do it for today's show, man. I thank y'all for tuning in. Our Bama State preview, I just keep checking the socials, and I'll let you know when that's dropping. They'll probably drop sometime this week. So y'all keep eyes open for that, and just keep checking the socials, and you'll find out when your team or any other team that you want to check out when their season recap will be coming. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC. See what else coming at you, and we're gonna catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.